Guys, I have some tragic news to tell you. I can't make easy clickbait off of whatever Nintendo is doing right now, which means that I'm gonna have to start making creative content. Oh, woe is me!
BeatEmUps.
So let me just start this video by quickly apologizing if somehow you are only now learning about this worthless drama through me. But basically, if you don't know, a lot of prominent Nintendo YouTubers are acting all doom and gloom about Nintendo and the Switch 2 right now, primarily because of the lack of a general Nintendo Direct. Because as we all know, life isn't worth living unless a company is feeding us glorified advertisements every 2 seconds. They all have different reasonings for why they feel this way, but the core message remains the same. Nintendo needs a big game right now, or the company is going to explode. The lineup of games coming is so boring right now, and we need a game that actually matters and will get NBC talking, dang it! And here's the thing, I'm not saying that you have to like every single game Nintendo is putting out. If a certain game isn't appealing to you, then it isn't appealing to you. There's nothing wrong with that. Even I don't find the 2026 lineup to be all that exciting for me. The only games I could genuinely see myself actually picking up, at least at full price, are Rhythm Heaven Groove and Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. And yes, even I am a little bit confused about Nintendo's strategy when it comes to how they're announcing stuff, because we basically only know what's coming out within a 2-month radius. We haven't seen anything about Rhythm Heaven Groove since it was announced a year ago. We haven't seen anything about the Duskbloods ever since it was announced in the Switch 2 Direct. We still know basically nothing about Splatoon Raiders since it was first announced, and I don't even know what the game is supposed to play like. We only just got more information about Yoshi and the Mysterious Book after half a year of radio silence, and we basically have no scope as to what Nintendo was doing in the latter half of the year. All that is really confusing, and I do think Nintendo needs to do a better job at communicating directly with their audience about what's coming up and when we can expect those games to come out. However, I like to think that there is a big difference between being confused as to what Nintendo is doing and then just acting blatantly entitled, and that is the trap that I think a lot of these big Nintendo YouTubers are falling into. And look, I know that a lot of people don't bother to name names when talking about stuff like this, and to an extent, I get it. Some people just don't want to deal with the smoke or the blowback, but I do believe, considering that a lot of these channels have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, they have a certain level of responsibility to uphold, as they do influence their audiences quite a bit with what they say, even if they act like they don't. So today I want to talk about 3 of those channels in particular that I think are morphing this discussion into something that is very unproductive, unhelpful, and arguably poisonous when it comes to how people talk about Nintendo online. And before I do actually start naming the names, I want to make it clear, this is not a harassment campaign. I have no ill will towards any of the people I'm talking about today, and even if I did, I have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to attacking people for just contributing to a conversation. If I see anyone who watches this video go to the comments of these guys' channels and starts attacking them on my behalf, I will permanently ban you from my own comment section. These are guys that just happen to make strange videos about Nintendo. They're not war criminals. Calm down. If you're going to poke fun at them, leave it in my own comment section. Simple as that. So with all that being said, let's start by talking about Wood from BeatEmUps. And if you know any of the YouTubers that I'm talking about today, BeatEmUps is probably the one. He is easily the most popular YouTuber on this platform doing coverage of the Nintendo Switch and Switch 2, with nearly 2 million subscribers to his name. His videos mainly consist of game reviews, big buyer's guides, thoughts on news coming out. Nothing too out of the ordinary for a Nintendo YouTuber, and he does get into clickbait territory pretty roughly sometimes, but overall, 95% of the time, I would say his videos are pretty harmless. A lot of BeatEmUps problems in particular mainly comes down to the hypocrisy he puts on display, where he ends up saying one thing, but ends up doing the other, which makes him a really difficult voice to trust. It's something that could easily be seen during the build up to the launch of the Switch 2. He made a number of videos after the first Switch 2 Direct talking about the pure greed on display from Nintendo.
This thing is expensive, and I don't just mean the Switch 2 console, I mean everything around it in its ecosystem. I don't really know what could justify this in my mind. Otherwise, we're in a slippery slope here, and if Nintendo do this with no real good reason, it's really just opening up the floodgates for other game companies and developers across the board to do the same, and I really don't want that. I'm not okay with a lot of Nintendo's new pricing. That I'm not okay with a C button that costs $20. That I'm not okay with a pack-in game costing people money. And that I'm not okay with Mario Kart being $80 without any explanation. Nintendo is charging you for your love of the franchise. And I don't know how you rationalize that or you feel about that, but that's scummy.
And hey, that's all fine and good. That is stuff that I believe deserves to be called out. I don't want people to pay more money for games than they should be. I don't want physical games to just be download codes in disguise. And it was a big deal given his platform that he was calling these practices out. And then frame 1, he goes to buy every single Switch 2 launch game key card or otherwise, and every single accessory.
So I bought every single Nintendo Switch 2 launch game. This is every single Nintendo Switch 2 accessory.
On top of saying that you should just buy Mario Kart World anyway because it is a game that you will want to play with friends.
I don't think it was worth the jump up to 80, but now that it is 80, is it worth it to buy it? I mean, it's really fun, and that's the only option. So what else am I going to say? I guess a very neglectful yes.
Literally a day after the console came out, so he couldn't even let his thoughts sink in. And look, I'm not always saying you have to act a certain way even if you see something you don't like. If you think something is too expensive and you still want to buy it because you think that you'll enjoy it, that's fine. I do not care about that. But you cannot just be a pro-consumer advocate one day only to line up and buy every single thing the company puts out the next. Why would anyone put faith in what you have to say if you're gonna pull a stunt like that immediately afterwards? But that's not even the main thing I want to talk about. Not too long ago, he put out a video asking one simple question. What's going on with the Switch 2? A video that is just so confusing and feels like it lacks a purpose because he clearly is not going off of any script or any notes for that matter. I don't even think he had a goal when he made this video. Heck, he even just openly admits it himself at the end of the video.
I want to talk to you guys and give you something to watch, so I decided to talk about that I have nothing to talk about.
But the video basically starts with him talking about how Nintendo just doesn't have enough games on the Switch 2 for him to be able to make good videos about. And many of the games that have come out and he has covered ended up disappointing him in one way or another, which fair dues. If you are disappointed by a game, there's nothing you can really do about that. But he ends up painting this narrative where he acts like he doesn't know what he's supposed to be talking about or what he's supposed to be doing or just playing.
I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing or what I'm supposed to be playing or reviewing for you guys.
Despite the fact that one is literally your channel, you're the creative force behind it, talk about whatever you want. And two, in the same video, he talks about how much he loves playing third-party games on the console, which, hey, I'll at least give credit. Better than some of the other Nintendo YouTubers out there, including one I will be talking about later. And he has made multiple videos talking about the third-party games that he loves in either standalone videos or in his buyer's guides, and gives them just as much thought as he would any Nintendo game. So when he says that he doesn't know what he's supposed to be talking about right now,
as of right now, I just don't know what I'm supposed to be doing or looking forward to.
One, again, that's stupid. You're the YouTuber. You're the one that chooses what you get to talk about. Make what you want. And two, I don't believe him, especially when you consider that he basically has every single noble game released on the Switch under the sun behind him on his shelves. I also just think that he is incredibly discourse poisoned because, and maybe this is much easier for me to say since obviously his YouTube channel channels completely eclipse mine in terms of subscribers and views. But he goes on this big rant in the video about how social media is so poisonous and Twitter is so bad. Literally a level 0, done to death conversation that helps absolutely no one. Yes, most of us know by now that Twitter, especially after its buyout, is a really bad and really toxic platform. So why do you still use it for any reason other than to promote your work? And he tries to justify having this conversation by claiming that, oh, the internet won't let me enjoy anything anymore.
There is Tomodachi Life, which I was really excited to play until the internet told me that it would make me gay. So, can't touch that one now.
Are you actually a child? Genuinely.
When I grew up, you just played a game and you either liked it or you didn't, and then that was the end of the story. You didn't have anybody telling you how you should feel about the thing that you experienced. You just had your own opinions. It was a beautiful thing.
Tell me you were never bullied in grade school without telling me you were never bullied in grade school. Like, do you actually hear how you sound right now? Yes, on the internet, people are going to say really mean things to anyone for any reason. Because ever since day one, the power of anonymity has allowed people to get away with saying whatever they want without getting punched in the face for it. And with a channel as big as yours, you're going to be a big target for a lot of those people. But you know what you say to them? Screw them. I'm gonna say what I want. And if you're mad at me, oh well. Legitimately, anyone that has a positive stance on something that they won't say because other people are mad at it genuinely have no spine. I'm telling you now. If you're gonna be so blatantly insecure that you're not gonna give a positive opinion on something because other people have a negative stance on it, you genuinely should not put yourself out there on a platform. Whatever Hobo McGee 47 says on Twitter should hold no value to what you personally hold in your heart. You can easily enjoy video games totally fine, and if anyone disturbs that peace, ban them. Just ban them. Ban them and don't even think twice about it. You should never let the validation of your hobby be determined by what random people out there have to say about it. I was in high school when I played my Nintendo 3DS, a time where it was really considered uncool to be a Nintendo fan. And every now and then, I would be poked fun at because of it. But you know what? I was way too busy building the perfect town in Animal Crossing New Leaf for me to care, because I value those personal experiences way more than a person that goes away the second I leave the school. Not everyone is going to like what you do, and that is something that you need to accept. And some of it is admittedly going to be on you as well, because a couple weeks later, Wood made a follow-up video that presents itself as the polar opposite of what this video was. And it starts with him complaining that Twitter read the video as a typical Nintendo hate video instead of what he claims it's supposed to be about, how much he's been enjoying third-party games. And I'm sorry, but when you make a video with a title and thumbnail that is so deliberately clickbaity, you cannot be mad at others for assuming a certain thing from it. You just can't. And then the rest of that video is just him gushing about how much he loves Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9 on the Switch too, which good for him, but nothing too crazy beyond that. So for as much of a hypocrite BeatEmUps portrays himself as, you can tell he does at least enjoy video games, and he is willing to acknowledge and play a lot of third-party games. The same can't really be said about the other two people we're talking about. That's right, fellas. It's time for me to get racist towards blue people now. I've been familiar with Arlo as far back as 2016 when he was on his Paper Mario crusade. And I, for the longest time, and to an extent still do, find him to be a pretty credible source for authenticity within the Nintendo space. He's very lighthearted and bubbly, but also very grounded and critical to ensure that his opinions actually hold merit. That is until the Switch 2 became a thing, and all of a sudden this tapeworm entered his brain that brainwashed him to believe that he is a business analyst. Whenever he's doing a video talking about the sales numbers of the Switch 2, or the lack of news surrounding the console, or basically anything that is considered even slightly controversial about it, he approaches it with this strange aura of anxiety, where he either doesn't want to be too negative because he wants to protect the Switch 2 from the haters, or he's really negative because he's thinking from the lens that the company's problems should be ours as well. To give one example of the former, on his side channel Topic Arlo, he made 2 videos talking about a controversy surrounding Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and Arlo is a big Pikmin fan. So naturally, he wants it to be seen in the highest light possible. But back when the Switch 2 launched, and not that this isn't still a problem now, but back around launch, there were a number of Switch 1 games that weren't really working well on the Switch 2. One of those being Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and Arlo decided to make not 1, but 2 videos about it. A lot of people were reporting tons of bugs and glitches and screen flickering that just wasn't present on Switch 1. And Arlo's videos were him just basically acting like they weren't that big of a deal, because he played the game for about an hour on Switch 2 and said it ran fine enough for him, even though he literally admitted that the game crashed during that time, which is never really a good thing for a console game.
Nothing about this I would consider borderline unplayable. I did get one crash. It happened when I was exiting to the menu. I got it, it crashed.
Well, which one is it, Jam John?
And he tries to justify why he felt this way by not only thinking about Nintendo's side.
They had a lot of games to port over to Switch 2. They didn't just hit a button and it all worked. You know, they've got a lot of first-party games, so there are a couple of them that have had problems.
Which, they are a giant corporation, literally one of the richest companies in Japan, if not the richest. You should not care about their logic behind this. I don't care if they have a lot of games to port to the Switch 2. If their game isn't working on their platform, they should not be selling it. But he also just goes the blatant coward's way out by saying, oh, the world is just so bad right now. It's not worth it to criticize something as minor as this.
There's too much going on in the world right now. There are too many other much bigger problems, and I just can't be bothered about all of this stuff.
My guy, a problem is still a problem regardless of how big or small it is. If the fact that children are starving in Africa makes it so that you can't properly criticize a product that is being sold to you for not functioning properly because you just don't need that negativity, I think that is just an absolutely pure tunnel-visioned way of looking at the world, and you should never be allowed to criticize anything if you have that mindset. And for the record, he was saying literally all of this after Nintendo already confirmed that they were going to patch the game. And when you know it, Pikmin 3 Deluxe runs perfectly fine now on the Switch 2, so I guess him thinking that it's not big of a deal really wasn't that big of a deal. But in terms of more general Switch 2 discussions, dude's basically just become a big doomer. He's constantly been worried about the sales numbers of the Switch 2, and that not enough people are coming in to buy the console. It was made very prominent in a video on his main channel talking about why he felt Nintendo was going to have a really rough 2026.
I do think that this thing is going to have a much more difficult year 1 and maybe even year 2 than Nintendo or we could have ever anticipated.
Mentioning how Nintendo and just the gaming industry as a whole had a pretty rough holiday season for 2025, and then assumes that 2026 in general was going to be pretty dang rough for them by using a bunch of whataboutisms, such as the online drama surrounding the Switch 2, the fact that a lot of people have huge backlogs, the cost of living in general just going up and up. And then a couple days later, Nintendo put out a financial report that showed that the Switch 2 had already sold 17 million units in just 7 months. Not to mention is also the fastest selling console in US history. Uh-oh. Yeah, and then he made a follow-up video where he wasn't even willing to admit to his audience that he was just fear-mongering.
Was Arlo wrong? Well, the answer to that question is...
Yes. Yes, you were. And yet he still tries to gaslight his audience into believing that the Switch 2 is going to struggle maybe a little bit less, but still will, because of not only the reasons he mentioned before, but also because of Nintendo's lack of a big game.
And Nintendo really does not have any big system sellers coming anytime soon.
Oops! And he continues to do this on his side channel, Topic Arlo, where he's made multiple videos now coping about the lack of a Nintendo Direct, because we need a huge game to get the people talking.
The Switch 2 is selling fine. You know, we know now that, like, the sales numbers are still good, but there is still this just kind of feeling that Nintendo hasn't quite provided enough of those big games yet to push a lot of people over the edge. We got a lot, I mean, we got, you know, the Switch 1 sold so many units, so like there are a lot of people who are just kind of waiting for the next big thing, for a couple more big things.
And here's the thing, I'm not gonna sit here and act like the Nintendo Switch 2 is gonna have the smoothest ride myself. Every video game console ends up facing problems from time to time. And even I myself tend to be fascinated with sales data because, yeah, it's just interesting to see how well something does. I'm someone that regularly looks at the Billboard Hot 100 because I'm just interested in seeing what music is super popular right now. But with that being said, am I gonna sit here and let how well something does affect how much I enjoy it? I think I speak for everyone here when I say no. Like, it's not our job as fans of Nintendo to be worried about how well the company is doing or not. They are one of the richest corporations in the world. And unless you directly own stock within the company, which I think pretty much all of us don't, why should any of us care? I'd get it if it was a company like Yacht Club Games, for example. If you don't know, they're the creative minds behind Shovel Knight, which is one of my favorite indie games of all time. Because yeah, they are a small indie studio and they are really struggling right now. They have flat out said that if their next game, Mina the Hollower, doesn't reach a certain amount of purchases, the company is going to be in really huge trouble. That is not something Nintendo has to worry about. They could fail for decades and they would still be in business. Now yes, if sales were at a really low point, then we could actually see it hurt the quality of their games. But the fact that the Switch 2 has already sold more in 7 months than the Wii U sold in its 4+ year lifespan, I think is more than enough to tell me that things are going to be pretty smooth with their game lineup. And that is the only thing that we as Nintendo fans should be caring about. And of course, it would be one thing if there were just no games to play at all. I mean, the Wii U launched with just Nintendo Land and New Super Mario Bros. U, and we had to wait a full 7 months for another first-party game to come to the console. And that game was Game & Wario. And luckily, the game lineup that we have gotten so far for the Switch 2, regardless of your opinions on the games themselves, since that's all subjective at the end of the day, has been coming really steadily and efficiently. But I guess for some people that's just not good enough. And now we get to the YouTuber that is quite frankly just as greedy as Nintendo, Nintendo Land. And not the game Nintendo Land, that game is pretty sick. I'm talking Nintendo Land, the YouTube slop machine. See, in the case of BeatEmUps and Arlo, while I'm not particularly a fan of their work, or in the case of Arlo, I used to be, but not anymore, I can see why people would go and watch those channels because they do provide some valuable insight whenever they can. I cannot say the same thing about Nintendo Land, or at least at this point in time. Here's another Nintendo news channel, and I say news with the biggest asterisk in the world because the news basically consists of 90% Mario, 10% other. His most well-known contribution to the internet is a video called Nintendo Has Forgotten About Mario. A video that has over the years been rightfully made fun of and memed on because, yeah, the joke literally speaks for itself. And to this very day, he has been on a crusade of wondering where the next 3D Mario game is. And it has just gone worse and worse and worse over time. He tends to hype himself up to such a ridiculous degree that he basically convinces himself and his very impressionable audience that a 3D Mario game is going to be revealed on this specific date, whether it be based off of the timing with an anniversary or just his heart knows it's gonna happen. And then obviously when it doesn't happen, he gets upset about it. Even if we ignore the 3D Mario in the room, he just constantly complains about the fact that Nintendo doesn't have a big game right now, whether it be a new Zelda game or a new Smash Bros or a new Luigi's Mansion, because he just wants a game that'll get people excited to talk about about Nintendo again, with this weird fantasy that that one huge game will get everyone to shut up about the problems with the Switch 2.
As soon as the next 3D Mario or Smash Brothers or the next Zelda is revealed in any capacity, I promise you the evil sentiment from Nintendo fans will be gone. Everybody will go back to glazing Nintendo, myself included, loving Nintendo because there's stuff to look forward to.
This guy's not doing himself any favors. Nintendo Land in general is just such a close-minded person that he will complain about any Switch 2 game that isn't a Mario or a Zelda or a Smash Brothers, or in his own words, anything that's
Third-party nonsense.
because they either A, won't sell a majillion gazillion copies, or B, they're not what he specifically wants to have. It's the equivalent of if you were a kid on your birthday or Christmas and you get every single present that you ever asked for except for one, and you spend the rest of the day crying and whining about it instead of appreciating the other amazing gifts that you did get. And I know this from experience. Back in 2013 on Christmas, I didn't get Super Mario 3D World, and I basically spent a lot of my day being really upset about that because I really wanted that game in particular, meanwhile completely ignoring that I did get The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker HD and Pikmin 3, and knowing that Super Mario 3D World would come a week later, completely ignoring those two incredibly great experiences I could have had because I didn't get the other third one as well. And Nintendo Land constantly tries to defend himself by saying that he does play other games like Fire Emblem and Xenoblade, and even made a couple of videos about them. So therefore he is completely safe from that criticism. But no, just no. When every other video you put out is you whining about a game that you know is inevitably going to happen because, yeah, why would Nintendo ever skip out on a 3D Mario for their console? Saying that you play other games is not going to mean anything to anyone, especially when you do make a video about said other game and then you never talk about it again because it obviously doesn't get the same amount of views as your regular videos. And it would be one thing if this was just a guy wanting a 3D Mario game so badly, but then he has to make it every other game's problem.
I think all fans and non-fans of Xenoblade and Fire Emblem can admit that these two franchises are seen as more niche than the others. Fire Emblem is definitely growing to something a lot bigger, but still, they're definitely not going to get the attention of a Mario, a Zelda, a Kirby, any of those main franchises. But just like I said, why can't we have directs that give a little bit of both? There's a general audience that only plays Mario and Zelda games. Give them something. Give them a tease. Give them a tease at the next Smash, Mario Maker, Luigi's Mansion, something to tie them over while also revealing the next Fire Emblem. Your Fire Emblem game shouldn't be the last big major reveal of the Direct, and your Xenoblade game shouldn't be the Direct starter in any case.
Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Fire Emblem and Xenoblade are not good enough to carry a Nintendo Direct on its own, because they're clearly very inferior to my Scrimbly. Seriously, what an absolutely tone-deaf anti-art statement to make. Like, is he technically right when he says that a Fire Emblem game is not going to get as much attention by people as a Mario or a Zelda or an Animal Crossing game? Yes, but one, Fire Emblem is still a big enough franchise to draw a lot of people in to the point where the reveal trailer for Fortune's Weave has nearly 1 million views on YouTube. Two, you know that Mario, Zelda, and Animal Crossing are inevitabilities for the console, while franchises like Fire Emblem and Xenoblade, while still likely, are not always a guarantee. And three, while I do think teases for bigger games would be nice, because yes, I do agree that it is very confusing as to why Nintendo has been so radio silent about anything that's coming out in the latter half of 2026. I think it is just generally better for us to wait until they actually have something ready to show for those games, so that we're not stuck with either a logo for an extended period of time or a completely rushed product. You can't rush art. The reason why Fire Emblem was the big game that they ended their last Direct on was because that was the game they had ready to show at that time. And honestly, the fact that Fire Emblem was that big game in the Direct shows that Nintendo genuinely does see it as a big franchise, and I think helps get more eyes onto the series than it would have gone otherwise. I've never really played a lot of Fire Emblem myself, and even I'm super interested in Fortune's Weave. I just find the Colosseum concept of the game to be really friggin' fascinating. And even if I didn't find interest in the game, well, I know there's plenty of other people that will. Fire Emblem is not going to stop a 3D Mario game from happening. Fire Emblem is just the game that they're ready to show at that point. The guy in general just also has the nerve to say that the Switch 2 is so incredibly boring right now because of the lack of those big games. Meanwhile, he completely groans whenever Nintendo has a partner showcase or an indie world, where even if they do reveal some really freaking good games, because they're not going to have the big games that the Switch 2 quote-unquote needs right now, he's going to be upset about these games' very existence. And he tries to defend himself by claiming that most people who play third-party games obviously already own a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X or a PC to play those other games. While in this very same video saying how a lot of people cannot afford to buy consoles right now because of how rough the economy is.
Now, I like to assume that a lot of people, if not most people, have another console in their household outside of a Nintendo Switch to play other games on, whether it be a PC, a PS5, or even an Xbox. The economy is screwed up right now. Gas prices are through the roof, housing is an absolute mess, and groceries are just as bad.
Like, literally pick a lane, broski. How you consume media is not how the real world works. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I was too thrilled about that partner showcase. I was pretty bored watching most of it. The only thing that caught my eye that I know I want to buy is the Super Bomberman collection. And even then, I gotta wait until August to get that because I want the physical edition. Though I also am interested in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle because I think they did confirm that is going to be on a full cartridge, which is great. But there is a difference between not being interested in the third-party game lineup, which if you aren't, then fair dues, and then groaning about their very existence. If you're going to remain super closeted that you cannot enjoy your console without a big Mario or Zelda or a Pokemon game and then complain about anything that isn't that, it's no wonder you think the Switch 2 is so boring. That's like saying going to Disneyland is a terrible experience that no one should do. Meanwhile, you're constantly riding on Space Mountain and Space Mountain alone the entire time while ignoring all the other exciting rides that they have at the park. The fact of the matter is this: third-party and indie games, while they may not be the reason why someone will directly buy a Nintendo console, helps give the platform a huge amount of legitimacy. The fact that I can play a game like Kirby in the Forgotten Land on the same console I could play Elden Ring on is a huge thing that is absolutely worth celebrating. If you play third-party games on other platforms, fair dues, but groaning about their very existence is just so close-minded and depressing. And overall, it just feels like his enjoyment of the Switch 2 solely depends on if other people around him enjoy it as well. I mean, this is the same guy that claims that hype matters just as much to Nintendo as their games.
I would argue that Nintendo is known just as much for its hype than it is just its video games. Growing up as a Nintendo fan was different than people that were PlayStation fans or Xbox fans because we have stuff to look forward to.
No, PlayStation and Xbox fans always had stuff to look forward to, but because you were a Nintendo-only kid, you only see the world through that specific lens, and therefore, Nintendo is the only company that can bring hype, apparently. You might have a point about Xbox today, though.
Nintendo fed their fans with exciting reveals and things to look forward to and big trailers and big surprises, and it just felt like a family friend. Obviously, this big corporation isn't our friend, but daggone it, the community and stuff that we built with these announcements was just special. And I feel like that's the one thing the Switch 2 is missing right now, is that special feeling.
You can absolutely create that special feeling again. You just need to open your mind and find the right spaces. It's as simple as that. And for a guy that claims that Nintendo is not our friend, he sure does act like they are. If you had a good memory of something way back in the day, obviously you're going to romanticize it by only remembering the positive things about it, without considering any of the negative stuff that you remember all too well from back then. And it is a trend that I see a lot of people fall into, where they complain about something right now, but when it's long gone, they remember just how good they had it. I'm not saying that Nintendo Land specifically did did this, but finding ways to appreciate the now, regardless of the circumstances surrounding it, is gonna do so much more for you in the long run than fixating on those circumstances. And his circumstances mainly come down to a lot of people right now are not enjoying this console or have a reason to buy it, therefore I shouldn't be enjoying it either.
I just really hate this stigma out there that just because people only want to wait for things like Mario, Zelda, Kirby, and Animal Crossing, that they're just baby Nintendo fans or something along those lines. So what? It's people's hard-earned cash and money that they're choosing to wait to spend it on, and they might be upset that they maybe bought into a Switch too early, expecting to see something like the next Smash or the next 3D Mario by now, and they haven't seen it yet. Of course, it's their fault for maybe buying in early, but at the same time, Nintendo also had things like Mario Kart World that they could have been excited for and was extremely let down when they played it because it just was nothing like the other Mario Kart games in the past.
I do agree that people should wait to spend their money on a product until they know that the value proposition for them is going to be worth it. I mean, I personally would not have a Switch 2 right now if it weren't for the fact that I literally got my dream game, Kirby Air Riders. But that's the thing, I knew that game was gonna happen. If you're buying into a product right now because you hope something good is gonna come from it in the future, and nothing that's available right now is appealing to you, you have absolutely zero right to blame anybody for that other than yourself. And I am not sorry when I say that. $450 is a lot to spend on any product that you don't know if you're gonna get any sort of value out of. And let's say in this hypothetical scenario, I was disappointed with Kirby Air Riders because like I said, that was the reason I got the console. I'm still gonna try and make the most out of it by finding games I do genuinely really like on the thing. And well, you know it, I also happen to really enjoy Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. And I've even picked up a couple of indie games like Ball Pit and Cast and Chill that I know I'm gonna sink a lot of time into. Also, Fast Fusion is a really freaking good racing game and I really wish it got more updates. And that, I think, is the most important thing here. Why should the fact that other people around you haven't found their way into the Switch 2 ecosystem yet affect your overall enjoyment of the console that you already purchased for yourself? The idea of other people enjoying the same thing that you do affecting your overall enjoyment of said thing is genuinely such a sad reality to live in. How many people know about things' existence and whether they think is good or bad should not at all affect what you personally hold to your heart. My favorite video game of all time is Super Monkey Ball 2, a game that I know is fairly niche that a lot of people do not care about. But am I ever gonna let that affect my overall enjoyment of the game? No. I still play that game regularly, whether it be through the main game, the party games, or even some of the custom level packs that so many dedicated fans have made for the game. And I don't need anyone else to validate my love for it. Just like I do not need validation for my love of the Switch 2. Could the console be better? Yes, definitely. I hope you have not been taking this video as me trying to defend the issues with the system. Like I said, yes, I do find it strange that Nintendo has been so radio silent about what's coming up beyond a 2-month radius, because they usually have enough info to keep people fed for about half a year or so. The fact that we know nothing about Rhythm Heaven Groove despite being announced a year ago is insane to me. The fact that I don't even know what Splatoon Raiders even is as a game is insane to me. I do think Nintendo needs to do a better job at keeping players informed as to what they're gonna get with the system within the many months ahead, especially considering that yes, this is a brand new console. I just don't think that their problem is that they don't cater their game lineup towards YouTubers that want to milk views off of them. And that correlates to my big theory where the actual problem lies. I don't think that these YouTubers are creative enough or interesting enough to be able to entertain their audiences on their own without relying on the Nintendo news hype sphere. These channels desperately rely on Nintendo releasing a game that they know will get them tons of views, that any game that doesn't get them big numbers is deemed as lesser than them as a result of that. I have no doubt that these guys genuinely did love video games when they started doing YouTube videos. In the case of BeatEmUps in particular, I kinda still do, considering he still does talk about a wide variety of games. But ever since they saw huge success from making YouTube videos to the point where it is now their full-time jobs, any game that could cause even the slightest dent within the algorithm, assuming they're not getting paid to talk about, by the way, is genuinely seen as not valuable to them or not a priority, especially if it's not a game that's relevant to talk about right now, because Nintendo is only as good as what they put out 2 months ago. And here's the thing, I'm not saying that it's bad to be motivated by money somewhat. Anyone that preaches the mindset that YouTube used to be so good when it wasn't for profit, genuinely level 0 conversation. I love the fact that people can make full-time careers off of doing YouTube videos. In a perfect world, I would love to do that. And I don't think it's bad to make videos that you know are going to be genuinely appealing to your audience or even a mass audience. That's part of the reason why I made some of my Pokemon videos earlier on this channel. But when it reaches a point where you see video games as nothing more than content for you to make, that you never end up making videos for yourself, this is what your channel is going to turn into. Just nothing but whining about why you are not specifically being catered to. I put out a video not too long ago talking about the last Indie World show, and I knew full well that wasn't gonna get nearly as many views as my Pokemon videos. But you know what? I didn't care, because at the end of the day, I love video games, dude, no matter where they come from. And I want to share what I absolutely love about this medium from both the popular side and the more niche side that deserves a bit more of a spotlight. If you want to be truly happy with yourself on this platform, whether you're doing it full time or for the love of the game, you have to accept a reality where it's okay to sometimes not get a 1 of 10 on the YouTube dashboard. Which, if you don't know what I'm talking about, a 1 of 10 basically means that out of your last 10 public videos on your channel, your most recent one performed the best. And I've seen people get addicted to these numbers. It is a system that is literally designed to hook you in and tell you exactly what you are doing right and wrong from a business side of things, even if it doesn't contribute to something that's mentally sound. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm almighty and holy and never look at this at all, because sometimes I am curious about what trends are going on, but usually this tab is closed for me, because if you are not careful, you will get your soul sucked into these analytics and be trapped in a never-ending spiral that will completely warp why you even make YouTube videos in the first place. And maybe the algorithm really is that bad for these channels. Okay, the problem is these guys are incredibly lucky to be able to do what they do full time. And the world of video games is so vast with so many opportunities that if the algorithm is really that bad for them, literally just find any other games worth talking about. Maybe it won't get as many views as you would hope it would, but at least it's more valuable to put out there than whining about nothing for the 30th time this year. So that's pretty much what I want to say with this video. Now, I don't expect any of these YouTubers to actually change or anything like that. I doubt any of them will find this video either, and even if they do, I highly doubt anything I said is gonna change their minds on anything. My purpose with making this video is to encourage you, the person watching this, to not fall for this trap that there is absolutely nothing going on with Nintendo just because the games aren't big enough, or in Pocopia's case, they think aren't big enough to be able to afford them their entire month's rent alone. Especially when there's tons of other really good Nintendo adjacent channels out there that have absolutely no problems covering all the news related to Nintendo, both the super popular and the lesser known stuff, and are clearly having a really good time doing it, or even Nintendo adjacent YouTubers who find ways to entertain their audience regardless of what's going on in the Nintendo news sphere at the moment. And to those channels, this video is not about you. I'm talking about the types of channels that attract audiences that leave comments like this. I hope that your parents are the ones that are making you pay for the repairs, kid. Now, once again, I have to emphasize, please do not go and harass any of these channels. I do not have a burning hatred for the people I talked about here. And even if I did, my personal code of conduct and my morals do not only apply to people that I do like. like. Keep the discussion focused on what these people are saying, not them as people themselves. I do not believe that any of these guys should have their careers taken from them or anything. I just think that their mindset of complaining about a lot of video games, not because they don't think the type of style is super engaging, not because of any anti-consumer practices with them like absurd prices or microtransactions or game key cards, not because they think the games are barren on things to do in them, not for any reason that actually has weight and merit to it, but simply because this won't boost my channel in the algorithm, therefore the game is worthless. I think it's just a toxic and sad mindset to live your life around, and I hope that people stop falling for their narratives, genuinely. Which, on that note, my final message to leave off with is that if you really are that blatantly impatient for the next 3D Mario, then please just play other games. There are hundreds upon thousands of classics that you could be playing right now while you're in the middle of a game drought. And if you need something that's just like a 3D Mario game, the indie space has so many awesome alternatives to keep you occupied. In fact, here's a list of some awesome indie 3D platformers right now that are either out now or are expected to come out sometime soon. Search around and find what you like. Because at the end of the day, if you're saying that the Switch 2 or gaming in general is just so boring right now or isn't fun anymore because you refuse to step out of your comfort zone, that is 100% a you problem. That's all from me, and I'm gonna end this video with one final clip from Nintendo Land's original Nintendo Has Forgotten About Mario video. God bless and have a good one. Bye-bye!
I mean, I'd even count Donkey Kong in there, because if the Odyssey team is working on a 3D Donkey Kong, that's like a new Mario to me. But